There is a story told by a veteran of the U.S. Marines who once participated in the fierce Battle of Khe Sanh in 1968. At that time, the U.S. Marines had seized control of the main base and an airfield in a valley surrounded by hills. For many weeks, only one single sniper, hidden on a distant hill, continuously fired toward the base. His bullets caused casualties and severely restricted American movement. American troops launched numerous searches and artillery strikes. Yet they could not locate or eliminate the gunman. Finally, they decided to conduct a large-scale airstrike, mobilizing various types of aircraft and using all kinds of munitions, from napalm bombs to 20mm cannons. During that devastating bombardment, every U.S. soldier at the base had to hide deep in the trenches. The hills were engulfed in fire. Flames rose high, and thick smoke covered the sky. It seemed as though nothing could have survived such destruction. But the moment the aircraft withdrew, a gunshot echoed once again from the burning hill. The sound of that lone rifle stunned everyone. The Marines at the base stood up in disbelief, and then in admiration. They knew, at that instant, that their opponent was no ordinary soldier, but a warrior of extraordinary courage and will. The U.S. Marines are known as the most elite fighting force, handpicked from the infantry, yet even they could not help but respect that brave Vietnamese sniper, a symbol of the indomitable spirit of the Vietnamese army. That very same spirit lived in every corner of Vietnam, and Khe Sanh was no exception. In Khe Sanh, American forces employed every possible method to destroy the tunnel network: smoke bombs, tear gas, pumping water underground, plowing with tillers, dropping explosives, and even using tanks. They tried everything, but in the end, they realized that the only way to truly understand this mysterious underground world was to go down there themselves. Those who ventured into the tunnels were given a name: the Rat Soldiers. Before we talk about how our soldiers confronted them, we must mention another unique tactic the Americans used: the introduction of a strange plant, which the people of Khe Sanh called American grass. This was not an ordinary herb. It thrived on rainwater, growing rapidly to 2 or 3 meters tall by the end of the rainy season. Its stalks were thick and razor-sharp. When the dry season came, it turned yellow and brittle like straw, and that was when napalm bombs were dropped upon it. Napalm bombs were terrifying weapons. When they burned, they consumed all oxygen in the air and produced large amounts of carbon monoxide, causing suffocation. The devastation was total. After the bombardments, every tunnel hatch became exposed, impossible to camouflage. Any movement left footprints, and every trace could be easily followed. For the Americans, it was as if they had discovered a revolutionary tactic, like the invention of fire. But for our soldiers, it was just another challenge. We had long lived by the motto: go without sign, cook without smoke, speak without sound. Even under the most difficult conditions, we knew how to move without leaving traces. At night, when the Americans rested, we would emerge to attack, and erase every footprint on our return. That was why, no matter how hard they tried, the Americans could never truly know what we were doing. However, with the tunnel entrances now exposed, we had to find ways to protect them. When it came to fighting the Rat Soldiers, we faced many disadvantages. These troops had 2 missions. First, to gather intelligence and documents. Second, to discover the most effective ways to destroy our tunnels. The Khe Sanh tunnel entrances were always designed extremely small, just enough for a thin Vietnamese soldier to slip through. But for those American soldiers, heavy with gear and used to hamburgers and cola, it was impossible to fit. To counter this, the U.S. sent teams of mercenaries of Thai or Korean origin to enter the tunnels. Our troops, in turn, used many types of traps. One of the most common was a mine placed directly under the hatch cover. When an enemy team discovered the entrance and opened the cover, the mine would detonate immediately, killing them all and collapsing the tunnel entrance, erasing every trace. Later, when the Americans learned of this, they began sending soldiers better equipped for underground combat. Each was outfitted with a pistol, dagger, flashlight, communication device, and a gas mask. But all of that gear often worked against them. The gas masks made it difficult to hear movement in the dark, and the narrowed tunnels made the heat unbearable. Large weapons were useless underground, and even the compact M1911 pistol was a nightmare. Every shot echoed violently in the tight spaces, deafening or even injuring the shooter. Eventually, they switched to silenced pistols recovered from World War II to reduce noise. After overcoming these challenges, the Americans continued their descent, and that was when they met our traps. Among the most feared were the bamboo traps. Though not always fatal, they inflicted terrible injuries and crushed morale. A soldier who fell into one usually had to have his leg amputated just to be pulled out. Contrary to popular belief, our traps were not just sharpened bamboo spikes. We split the bamboo into thin, blade-like slivers, soaked them in a mixture of vinegar, urine, and feces for days, making them highly poisonous. When a soldier was impaled, there was little his comrades could do but pull him out and watch in horror. The sight alone was enough to break their fighting spirit. Inside the tunnels, we also built small observation holes. When an enemy crawled past, we would strike suddenly, driving sharpened bamboo spears into their bodies, pinning them to the tunnel walls. Life underground was harsh beyond imagination. The air was damp and stale. Food was scarce, and disease spread easily. Every soldier suffered from skin infections, burning sores that blistered and oozed for weeks. Yet everyone endured it, knowing that being captured and tortured by the enemy would be 1,000 times worse. Because of that, our resolve was absolute. By all means necessary, we had to stop the Americans, or die trying. To increase our defenses, we even designed bow and arrow traps. A simple tripwire along the path would trigger a bow, firing an arrow straight through the tunnel, where it could not miss. These traps were brutally effective, but they also caused us pain. Sometimes the enemy refused to retrieve their dead, leaving the bodies to rot underground. Our soldiers had to drag them out, enduring the unbearable stench of decay. Worse still, in the chaos of combat, we sometimes triggered our own traps. Even though we tried to mark their locations, darkness and panic often led to tragic accidents. Both sides also used animals in their tactics. The Americans released trained dogs to sniff out tunnels, so we countered with snakes. We placed venomous snakes in cages connected to tripwires. When an enemy brushed the wire, the cage door opened, and the snakes struck. At first, this tactic was highly effective, until the Americans began sending weasels ahead to detect the snakes. After that, our snake traps were abandoned, leaving only bamboo and arrow traps in use. One might ask, why didn't we fight from afar instead of risking our lives in those deadly tunnels? The answer lies in our creativity. We had developed many ingenious traps, not just underground, but also against troops and aircraft above ground. Among them, the traps designed to target helicopters were legendary. We discovered that U.S. helicopters needed open fields to land troops. So, we planted mines in those areas. Because we couldn't mine every possible landing zone, we cleverly covered the others with trees and obstacles, forcing the helicopters to land exactly where we wanted. When they descended, the strong rotor wind triggered the mines, and the aircraft exploded on impact. Later, the Americans adapted by lowering soldiers on ropes instead of landing directly. But once again, we found a countermeasure. We tied a small propeller to the detonator of a mine and hung it from a tree branch. When the helicopter hovered overhead, the wind spun the propeller, triggering the explosion, killing the soldiers below. These tactics struck fear into every American soldier sent to Khe. Just hearing the name, Khe, made them tremble. Thanks to the ingenuity of the Khe people, even military experts around the world, especially in the Middle East, studied their methods. To this day, the Americans remain haunted by their underground war in Vietnam. That is why they have had to rebuild their rat force. In October 2018, the U.S. Department of Defense admitted one of its greatest weaknesses: the lack of technology for operations in dense urban environments and underground structures. They even organized underground challenges, inviting participants to design remote-controlled robots capable of navigating tunnels and locating hidden objects. However, in deep tunnels, under reinforced concrete or thick layers of rock, communication between the robots and their controllers still failed. For that reason, the U.S. military continues to train and restore its specialized tunnel forces. To truly understand Khe Sanh, one must visit it in person. There, you can crawl through the tunnels. See them with your own eyes. Taste the cassava that sustained our soldiers. Explore the famous Hoang Kam smokeless kitchen. And even fire a real gun. It is an experience you will never forget. Through the story of Khe Sanh, we can see the extraordinary creativity and unbreakable will of the Vietnamese people in the face of invasion. That same spirit endures to this day, a spirit of unity, resilience, and perseverance. Even during the global pandemic, Vietnam once again demonstrated that indomitable strength, standing firm and proving to the world that unity can overcome any challenge.